There's a rule every experienced hunter knows, even if nobody ever says it out loud. The woods don't care how good you are. Sergio Murgina knew that rule better than most. He'd been hunting since he was 12 years old, taught by his father on land that had been in the family for 3 generations. By the time he was in his 30s, he wasn't just good. He was the guy other hunters called when they got lost, when they needed advice on tracking, when they wanted to know which ridge held the biggest bucks that season. He didn't do it for attention. He did it because the forest, to him, wasn't a dangerous place. It was home, which is exactly why what happened to him didn't make sense to anyone who knew him. This is the story of the last hunting trip Sergio Murgina ever took, and the questions that, to this day, nobody has ever fully answered. To understand why this case unsettled so many people, you have to understand who Sergio actually was. He wasn't reckless. He wasn't the type to wander off trail chasing a trophy kill without telling anyone where he was going. Friends describe him as almost obsessively careful, the kind of hunter who checked the weather 3 times before leaving the house, who always packed extra supplies, just in case, who carried a compass even though he'd hunted the same land his whole life and could probably navigate it blindfolded. He preferred hunting alone, not because he disliked company, but because solitude was part of the appeal for him. He once told a friend that the only time his mind ever went completely quiet was when he was sitting still in a blind at dawn, waiting, breathing slow, watching the light change through the trees. For Sergio, hunting wasn't really about the kill. It was about the stillness before it. That morning, the one that would end up defining the rest of this story, started like hundreds of others before it. He left before sunrise. He told his family roughly which section of the land he planned to cover and when he expected to be back. He took his usual gear: rifle, knife, a small pack with water, a first aid kit, and a radio, since cell service in that area was unreliable at best. He never made it back. By early evening, when Sergio still hadn't returned, his family wasn't panicked yet. He'd stayed out later than planned before. The forest could swallow track of time easily, especially if he'd found good sign and decided to push a little further than usual. But as the sun went down and the temperature dropped, that mild concern turned into something sharper. Sergio always called or radioed if he was running late. Always. It was one of those unbroken habits, the kind that becomes so consistent people stop even thinking about it, until the one day it doesn't happen. And suddenly that silence feels louder than any noise could. His family tried the radio first, nothing but static. They tried calling, knowing full well the signal out there was unreliable, but they tried anyway, out of the kind of desperate hope that doesn't care about logic. Nothing. By the time night fully set in, they made the call nobody wants to make. They contacted local authorities and reported him missing. Stories like Sergio's tend to stick with people for a specific reason. They violate the story we tell ourselves about competence and safety. We like to believe that if you're careful enough, skilled enough, prepared enough, the wilderness simply can't get the better of you. Sergio was all of those things: careful, skilled, deeply prepared, and it apparently wasn't enough. That's uncomfortable. It's also, in a strange way, the point. The forest doesn't run on fairness. It doesn't reward experience with guaranteed safety. Every hunter, guide, and outdoorsman who has spent real time alone in wild terrain will tell you the same thing in different words. The moment you think you've mastered nature is usually the moment nature reminds you that you never did. Whatever ultimately happened to Sergio Murgina, an accident, an animal encounter, or something else entirely, his story became a quiet warning passed around in hunting communities for a long time afterward. Tell someone exactly where you're going. Carry more communication backup than you think you need. Set a hard check-in time and treat missing it as an emergency immediately, not after a few extra hours of hoping for the best. To this day, people who knew Sergio still talk about him the way you'd talk about someone who simply stepped out of frame. Not gone in the traditional sense, just unaccounted for. His name still comes up in that stretch of hunting country, usually in a lowered voice, usually followed by someone saying they still don't know what really happened out there. Maybe someday there will be an answer. Or maybe this is one of those stories that stays open forever, a reminder of how much can still be uncertain, Even in a world that likes to believe every mystery eventually gets solved. What do you think happened to Sergio Murgina? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story, hit subscribe. There's a new one waiting for you every week. End.